Hello there, this is David Kennedy McCulloch. I thought some of you might be amused to hear my early writing. When I was 14 and a high school student at Ayr Academy High School in the 1960s, I wrote a short story that got published in the annual school end of year book. So that book was called Prospicky, and this is the 1969 version. And the story I got published is called A Bit of a Cliche. And there's the artwork that was written to accompany it. It's a rather angst-ridden adolescent story, but you might enjoy it. A bit of a cliche. The front door clicked softly shut. Rather like a rifle being cocked, he mused. As he walked down the path, under the arch, and out onto the wet pavement, he could still hear her voice, whining out all manner of orders and complaints. It wouldn't matter now. He paused at the top of the hill. Looking back at suburbia gave him no feeling of nostalgia. The twinkling lights of all shades of orange and green. The red Coke sign flashed monotonously on and off. Occasionally he would see the upstairs window of a house light momentarily and then flick out. Yet he felt no regret, no fits of remorse. The whole scene to him was an absolute cliché. The darkness excused the lewd nightlife of a typical dormitory town. His gaze shifted slowly across the scene, his bulging eyes resting on his own small, typical house. He forced back the tears. What had he done for himself? 45, and he was so typical he ought to have had a stamp on his forehead. Fairly successful businessman, married, no family, one car. He tossed his head cynically, turned and moved off. Oh dear, I wonder where Albert was and why he was so sullen tonight. He isn't usually, not on a Thursday. That's his fish night. He always likes his little bit of haddock on a Thursday. Good for his duodenum, I think. But I do wish he wouldn't shout so. Off he goes out the door at that time of night. It's gone 11:30, way past his bedtime. I suppose it'd be silly to phone the police and then him turn up as they arrived. Oh, I don't know. The sea looked quiet tonight, unruffled by life. One or two sleepy seagulls broke the monotony of the scene. The rain was getting heavier. Better put up the umbrella. As he did so, he suddenly halted. It hit him right in the middle of his typical red, shiny, middle-aged, beery nose. What was he doing? He was putting up a typically black umbrella to protect his typical bowler hat, covering his typically bald, just receding, dear, head. A great lump welled up in his throat, and he began to shiver with cold and anger. He hurled the umbrella over the edge, turned and stumped off into the blackness of the night. This rain's getting awful. I can hardly see. Better put the wipers on. I do hope he won't be angry with me when he gets home. Perhaps it's stupid getting worried about him like this, but he does have that Nuffield thing with the board tomorrow. He needs his sleep, you know. Oh, I wish he'd let me know what was worrying him. He was walking and walking and walking. It didn't matter where or for how long. He just walked and thought. What an insipid, insignificant little man he seemed in his own eyes. He had plucked up courage all day in his little office. He had planned what little there was to plan. No need for a will. Nothing to leave to anyone. No one to leave the nothing to. No, it had all seemed simple enough. He would go out for his usual walk at the usual time, go up to the cliff, and then just... Yes, that had been the flaw. He hadn't any guts. The very faults which had driven him to so much despair were now stopping him from ending it all. Ironically useless. He stopped for a moment to look at himself. Utterly drenched to the skin, he had lost his hat somewhere back along his train of thoughts. A freshly starched shirt tail bumpled out from below his silk waistcoat, revealing 4 or 5 lewd square inches of fat on that hairy, beery, nicely plump dear, paunch. One of his laces was undone, and he had mud spattered halfway up his leg. His mouth tasted salty. He was blubbering like a child. Anger and self-pity choked in his fat throat. Turning once more to escape from himself, he began to run, shutting his eyes like clams, petrified of himself, turning a blind eye to his faults. Panting and heaving, tripping and falling, he ran, goaded on by the spitting, lashing rain, on and on and... Oh, why doesn't he tell me things? Why can't he let me share in his problems? I do my little best. What more does he expect? Well, I'm not going on. I'll turn at the next bend and go home. He can just get wet for once. Can't expect me to go out in this fog. I can hardly see a thing. Oh, you'd almost think that was someone on the... Oh my God, no! A blaring noise in his left ear brought him back to reality. 2 blazing angry eyes, squeals and screeches of laughter. Uplifted by his own emotions, dashed to destruction by his refusal to see, crumpled and broken beneath the weight of unseen hope. The red blood of time oozed over his eyes and congealed. Well there, that's a cheery wee story out of the mind of 14-year-old David. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for your attention. Bye.